Every year, there are a handful of movies that just completely surprise you. Sometimes it's a movie that you didn't expect much that ends up being great. Other times, it's a long-awaited project that ends up living up to the hype.
Perhaps someone should explain to him who I am.
And even though we're still early into the year, 2026 has delivered some really interesting films across a lot of genres. We've gotten horror, crime dramas, romantic comedies, and some really unique genre mashups. So today I want to talk about some of my favorite movies from 2026 so far. Hey, my name's Johnny, and today we'll be taking a deep dive into my favorite movies from 2026, and let's get into it.
Although I'm betting I am a much nicer boss than you ever would have been.
Send Help. A woman and her overbearing boss become stranded on a deserted island after a plane crash. They must overcome past grievances and work together to survive.
I see no value in you. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, what?
One of the most entertaining surprises of the year so far is definitely Send Help. The film is directed by Sam Raimi, and if you're familiar with Raimi's work, you can instantly recognize his style all over this movie.
You ever hunt? I think I like it.
His over-the-top, almost comical gore, which a lot of it is, it kind of reminds you of Evil Dead 2 and Drag Me to Hell, stuff like that. He seems like he's having fun again in these films. This is what Hollywood thinks is an ugly loser. You just put her in glasses and frizz up her hair. Oh my goodness, she's terrible. Get her out of here.
Guys, she's got glasses and a ponytail.
Because the real star is Rachel McAdams. She gives an amazing performance, and it constantly shifts between vulnerable, sarcastic, and definitely unhinged. She's paired with Dylan O'Brien, who does an amazing job playing off her energy. And he's kind of the typical, douchebag boss, so you're definitely not rooting for him. Another cool element is the score from legendary composer Danny Elfman, which adds to the strange, playful tension that fits Raimi's directional style perfectly. It's one of those movies where the tone just keeps shifting. You think it's going one way, and it takes a complete 180. And just that unpredictability makes it really memorable. Definitely one of my favorites of the year so far. It's just a good time. It's wild. It's over the top, well written, and it's got Sam Raimi written all over it. I love it.
Are you kidding me?
That's not natural.
Cold storage. A deadly, rapidly mutating fungus discovered in 1987 breaks out of government containment years later. Two unlikely security guards must race to contain the infection to prevent humanity's destruction. And I know that sounds like a heavy metal song, but this movie is awesome. If you're a fan of horror movies, but with a weird sense of humor, you're going to like Cold Storage. It kind of plays along the lines of Send Help in the sense that it's completely over the top. It's very campy. They know what kind of movie they're doing.
I don't feel so good.
The screenplay comes from David Kapp, who wrote classics like Jurassic Park and Mission Impossible. Kind of fill the mix of suspense and pulpy fun into the film. The cast is really interesting too. I think they have a great cast here, and they all do a great job of working together.
You two may have started the night minimum wage guards, but you're a green light team now.
You got Joe Keery, who a lot of people know from Stranger Things, bringing his usual sarcastic charm into this one. Then there's Georgina Campbell. She's made so many good horror movies so early into her career, quietly building a strong horror resume over the last few years. But the real wild card is Liam Neeson showing up in a horror comedy. And he plays a man with a particular set of skills. Oh, wait, no, sorry, wrong movie. Seeing a serious actor like Liam Neeson pop up in something this strange is pretty refreshing. It makes the movie even more entertaining. It's the kind of film that almost feels like a throwback to the 80s and 90s creature feature films. I felt like I was almost watching an old John Carpenter movie while I was watching this one.
That's why I want to travel. You can actually be who you want to be instead of who they say you are.
How about every summer, wherever we are, we meet somewhere in the world?
People we meet on vacation. Poppy wants to explore the world, and Alex prefers to stay home with a good book. But somehow they are the best of friends. They live far apart, but for a decade they have spent 1 week of summer vacation together. I'm not a huge romantic comedy guy, but I enjoyed this one. I had a lot of fun with it. It wasn't too serious. It wasn't too, into the romance where anytime it became a serious moment of romance, it always kind of led with a little bit of comedy right after.
No.
Hey! What a coincidence! We just got hitched too. So sweet.
Congratulations, you two.
The movie stars Emily Bader and Tom Blythe, and the chemistry between them really carries the entire movie. Blythe has especially been on an interesting career path lately, joining up in bigger and bigger projects. The film is based on the popular novel by Emily Henry. What makes the movie stand out is how relaxed and natural the performances feel.
Oh my god.
I'm gonna pick you up on the condition that you don't call me Seabiscuit.
How did you know that I'd really want to do that?
Because I know you.
Just feel like they've known each other for their entire lives, which is the role they're playing in the movie. So it just feels right. It doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel awkward. Instead of just relying on constant jokes, it focuses more on personality and timing. It makes the dialogue feel a lot more authentic. All right, now that we got the rom-com out of the way, let's talk about War Machine. What begins as a routine military exercise quickly turns into a fight for survival when a group of U.S. Army Ranger trainees discover a crashed alien craft and awakens a massive robotic killing machine that begins hunting them one by one in the wilderness. War Machine is one of those movies where the cast alone is enough to get your attention. The film leads heavily into intense performances, and that's just where it really shines. One thing that stood out to me is the cinematography and the way the movie builds atmosphere through its visuals. This one came straight to Netflix, so my only regret is not being able to watch this in the movie theaters. This would have been amazing to see on a big screen. And this is a total popcorn movie. This is just a good time, not too serious. It's just complete action nonstop. The alien war robot in War Machine is designed like a futuristic battlefield tank, heavily armored, scanning targets with advanced sensors, and nearly impossible to destroy with normal weapons. What makes it cool is that it feels like a Predator-style hunter mixed with a giant combat drone, constantly tracking soldiers and adapting to their tactics while stalking them through the terrain. Some people don't really like it because they say it's a little bit over top and cheesy, but I grew up in the Arnold 80s era. I love the cheesiness, so bring it on. The performances carry a lot of emotional weight, and those performances give the film a really gritty energy. It feels a little bit more grounded than modern war movies, even though it's still completely over the top, so just prepare yourself.
Perhaps someone should explain to him who I am.
Peaky Blinders, the Immortal Man. A self-exiled Tommy Shelby, played by Cillian Murphy, is forced back into action when his estranged son, Duke, involves the Peaky Blinders in a dangerous Nazi-backed counterfeit money plot.
Feds, you decided this wasn't your war.
It is now.
If you were a fan of the series, this movie is just amazing to watch. Cillian Murphy returns as the great Tommy's fucking Shelby, and he once again proves why he became one of the most iconic anti-heroes of the last decade.
Stay calm, because this man, ladies and gentlemen, is Tommy Shelby.
The film also had some really impressive new cast members, like Rebecca Ferguson and Tim Roth, who I think does an amazing job here in this movie. I didn't know he was going to be in this movie, so once I saw him, I'm a huge Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs fan, so it was great to see him pop up in the movie because he absolutely killed it. And it just gave the movie a bigger cinematic feel. Murphy always played Tommy Shelby with this quiet intensity, and the movie just lets him dig deeper into that character. It's almost like they just throw Cillian on set and say, all right, go. And he just chews up the scenery. It feels less like a simple continuation of the show and more like a full cinematic finale to that entire story.
So let me get this straight. You created a fake animal. Yes. Which makes the other animals think you're an animal. Yes.
Hoppers. Animal-loving college student Mabel discovers experimental technology that lets humans transfer their minds into lifelike robotic animals. What makes Hoppers interesting is its weird mix of sci-fi and classic Pixar heart. The whole idea of humans controlling robotic animals lets the movie explore the animal world from the inside. Almost like Avatar, but with beavers and slapstick comedy.
This is like Avatar. This is nothing like Avatar.
The film also sneaks in environmental themes about protecting nature while still being funny, fast, and packed with chaotic animal adventure.
No! Put him down! No! Okay.
Why?
Now we're switching it up a little bit and going down the Disney route. And I love this movie. It was a good time. It had its serious moments like a lot of Disney movies do, but not too serious. I was still laughing all the way through it. And it was just a fun watch. It was something different than the typical serious horror movies that I tend to watch. And it killed it in the box office, so I guess I'm not the only one.
7 rich pricks. Between myself and $28 billion.
How to Make a Killing. A broke outsider who was cut off from his insanely wealthy family learns he's still technically in line for a massive inheritance. The problem? Several rich relatives stand between him and the fortune. So he begins a darkly comedic plan to eliminate each family member one by one to climb the inheritance ladder. What stood out to me about this movie is the pacing. Instead of just rushing through everything, it takes its time letting scenes build tension. I thought Glenn Powell did a great job. He seems like he's always charismatic and always has a lot of energy, and their performances give the film a slightly unpredictable edge. The fun comes from Powell using disguises, manipulation, and clever setups to remove each relative, while the movie mixes dark humor with a twisted take on wealth, privilege, and revenge. It's one of those movies where you're never completely sure where things are going next, which just makes it really engaging. Now, I'll be honest, I enjoyed this movie. I had a good time. I just feel like if it got pushed to rated R, they could have had a lot more fun with the killings, with the way that the main character killed off people. I just feel like that was the only thing that was missing. If it went from PG-13 to rated R and threw a little bit more gore, I'm not Mr. like I love gore, I need to have gore in all my movies, but this would have been the movie where that gore, that surprise factor, would have just put the movie over the top for me.
I'm breaking left! I got the roof! You want to steal this rip? Just say it out loud.
The Rip, a Miami narcotics police unit led by detectives played by Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, discovers about $20 million in cartel cash hidden inside a stash house. Instead of reporting it immediately, the team starts questioning each other's motives as greed, paranoia, and outside threats begin to tear the unit apart.
We gotta be smart right now. We gotta move this money, man.
Stay off the radios, no call outs.
The Rip has one of the most interesting casts of the year. The film stars Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, which is always fun to see because of their long history, and you can just tell they have chemistry in everything they do. Whenever those two show up in the film together, there's always a natural chemistry, and this film is no different. What made The Rip interesting for me is that it's less about shootouts and more about psychological tension among the cops themselves. The discovery of the money turns the entire movie into a pressure cooker where every conversation feels like a potential betrayal.
You a snitch, Mike?
It's the kind of gritty crime movie that almost feels like the early 2000s, like the early 2000s era of thrillers. That alone makes it stand out in front of today's movie landscape. So those are some of my favorite movies of 2026 so far. And what's exciting is we're still early in the year. I'm excited to see what we get, whether it's a new release or a new remake. I'm here for it. There are plenty of other movies still on the way. But so far, 2026 has already delivered a great mix of genres, from horror and crime movies to romantic comedies and big cinematic finales. And honestly, some of the biggest surprises have been the movies that flew under the radar. So I'm curious of what you think. What are some of your favorite movies of 2026 so far? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy movie lists, cult film discussions, and hidden movie gems, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more. My name's Johnny. Thanks for taking a deep dive into my favorite movies of 2026, and I'll catch you on the next one.